Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Moving Spotlight podcast.
Woo!
Corbin's pumped. That's his very excited voice. First of all, this episode, we're going to call this the cursing episode. If you have any children listening, please do not listen. We're going to have some fun this episode. There's going to be some swears, so please skip this episode if you don't like cursing. Possibly because of our guest and what I've been warned about a sailor mouth, but we'll see what happens.
His New Jersey sensibilities are going to come out.
Well, New Jersey, yeah, they know how to talk it. That being said, Corbin, what is your favorite curse word? Because we've given the warning, so please turn it off. We're going to put the little E there, which actually maybe makes us more attractive.
Yeah, you're bad
Corbin,
boys now.
what's your favorite curse word?
Favorite curse word? I mean, you got fuck. There's so many ways to go about using the word fuck. You're excited. It's when you're hungry. Like there's so many things and my favorite version of it is motherfucker. That's gotta be the best one because you can just when you're mad, it's just like you motherfucker. Like you really can feel that coming straight through the heart. Yeah, that's probably my number one with a bull has got to be the old F-bomb. What about you?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you took a good one. That's off the board.
Yeah, that's
out now.
Yeah.
I feel like the one I use without thinking a lot is "God damn it." I feel like "God damn it" is like my go-to. Like if something happens, like I hurt myself, or I'm annoyed, or I'm pissed, or it's a bad phone call. I'm like, "God damn it!" Yeah. Like that's a good. For some reason, that flow for me because I'm less swearing at people, and I'm more like pissed about the situation. I think so. Maybe that's.
I always swear at you, so I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't allow F-bombs, but anything else goes.
Well, it's funny enough, in high school, we did like a day of silence for like Pride Month. There was just like one day that we just go in and just don't say a word. And I got through most of the day and then I hurt myself. And I was like, God damn it. And then I was like, no, I was so close.
The whole day.
I was like, literally, I had an hour left. And I was like, no, what did I do? But yeah, that was in the chamber for me. So.
Oh my
gosh.
One.
Good pick.
Those are two solid ones. Our guest might have an opinion on this too, but I want to pivot to that. So today I'm super excited, Corbin, someone that stand-up comedian and writer, Ben Mehl. Ben, welcome to the show, bud. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, Ben.
Can I just say, so wait, Corbin, you told John that I'm this like potty mouth? Like I swear
Absolutely.
That's
yes, he did.
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. That's your New Jersey sensibilities, man. It always comes through.
Ben, do you have a favorite curse? I mean, you used a couple there already. Do you have something that flows for you?
No, I don't know if I have a favorite, but I like the phrase "for fuck's sake." Like
that's a good one.
Like what are we doing here?
That's one. That one I feel like. It comes out organically, like in a meeting or something. Like that one you can't really force that one at any point.
No. That one has to be organic. It has to be felt.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I was just thinking about? Have you guys ever, I don't know if I've ever written a swear in an email. Like I think maybe in text, but like I feel like when I'm typing like in an email, I feel like I've never written a swear. Like I mean maybe for like a script, but I feel like I've never like in an email been like this is fucking bullshit in an email, right? I mean I feel like have you guys ever like think about that? Is that like in an email it just doesn't?
I think like with email you got to be careful because it's documented for years. So if I swear in an email, I want you to know that I'm swearing it.
Yeah, I know the consequences.
Yeah, I want you to be able to pull it up 10 years from now and be like, yeah, he did curse at me. This happened.
I like the idea of a very, very professional email, and at the end you just sign off, fuck you.
Fuck off.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't we at the point where we know everything we kind of do online is being recorded somewhere? I mean, I feel like people should know that. They're like, I put it on, DuckDuckGo. They can't do my search browser history. Oh yeah, they can. They have it all. They have everything. Yeah. So just know, whatever email, whatever, like it's there. Someone's screen grabbed it, right? Like I've seen that where something like someone put something on Twitter. They're like, it was up for 6 seconds. We have the screen grab. I'm like, how did they get it so fast? It's all out there.
There's people who dedicate their lives to screenshotting things to save for a later date.
Yeah. It's all there. Well, Ben, I want to transition to something way more fruitful for people that are listening, which is you do stand-up comedy. How'd you get your start in stand-up comedy? I'm curious about talking about this. We haven't had any stand-up comedians on the show yet, so it's a cool world for us to explore and talk about.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I had always wanted to do stand-up comedy my entire life. Like I remember being 10 or 12 and starting with like seeing SNL and all the stand-ups that had been on that show, and seeing Chris Rock and Eddie Murphy Raw and Seinfeld, and being like, that's what I want to do. And then I didn't really have the confidence to do it, to be honest with you. I was afraid. It terrified me. And then I started learning how to write, creative writing and other things like that. And I moved out to Hollywood to make it as a screenwriter, still not doing stand-up. And I got to a point where a mentor of mine was like, look, you got to get on stage. I know something you want to do. If you don't do it now, it's never going to happen. And that was only a few years ago, almost 4 years ago. I just got up and, did terribly and was like, oh, I love this. And, I got one laugh, and it was like, maybe I can do this, And I just kept going and getting up as much as I can, and meeting some great people and trying things out. And, 4 years later, here I am.
What was the first venue that you're at?
Oh, wow. Well, the first time I ever did it was at this place. I don't know if it still exists, but it was like an acting theater, like a really kind of a black box place in Sherman Oaks called Cap Theater. I think it might be an F45 gym now. It's just
they're still doing stand-up there. It's hard. You got to get it in between the techno.
I'm sure they are. But it was kind of this cool little hole in the wall that did like an open mic thing. And my roommate at the time was like, I want to do a monologue. Can you come and support me? And I'm like, sure. So I went, and then they called my name, and she had written my name. I didn't even know. And so it was like, she kind of got me on stage, and I tried it and I loved it. And then, it's been a, kind of a journey like that, doing open mics, getting booked on shows, booking a television show, still doing open mics, getting on shows. It's kind of, stand-up is this revolving door where it's like one step forward, two steps backwards. And it's this real war of attrition where you will be rewarded if you do the work and you don't quit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, that first time, everyone I've heard, besides maybe like, I heard some story about Jerry Seinfeld, like being pretty good out of the gate, but everyone else is just like terrible. So where is it when it's terrible, but yet people still get like addicted to it? Like what is that? Is that from that first laugh? Is it from, I got through it? Is it from the camaraderie? I'm just curious. Yeah.
It's a great question. It's kind of like golf, right? Where there's 18 holes and there's a lot of time to hit some truly awful shots. Contemplate your life and be like, why am I doing this? I hate this. I suck at this. But then you hit that one shot where it just, you hit it perfectly. The ball goes near the hole and you're like, oh my God, I could be a professional at this, because you're delusional. Yeah. But you love it, and you love the feel of it and the sound of it and the compliments. People, what a great shot. You're so good. And you're like, you know what? I am pretty good at this. And then it's kind of like stand-up. It's like when I did the first 5-minute open mic I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to speak for 5 minutes? It seemed like an eternity. And, you're telling these stories or these jokes that really don't go anywhere, and they're fucking stupid. And then you tell one thing that gets a laugh, and you look and you're like, oh my God, they think I'm great. You kind of chase that, feeling. And try to tighten the material, and you work on it, and you try to understand how to tell either a coherent story with jokes or, set a punchline, that kind of thing. So that's how it starts.
This is a very technical question, and you may not have like a specific answer, but when you say tighten it up, what does that exactly mean? Like, do you sit down and you start to rewrite words? You start to rewrite the cadence of it? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think lucky for me, I'd always been kind of jealous of all the people who started stand-up early, at 18 or 20 or 21 or 25. And I started in my mid to late 30s. And but what actually helped me was I already knew how to write, because I had been writing professionally as a screenwriter. And screenwriting and stand-up are wildly different. But one thing it did teach me was how to come up with a process and understand structure, right? And so stand-up has its own structure and its own language. And once you start to understand it, you can create this iterative process where you sit down and you go, okay, look, I have this idea. It might be nothing. Let me write it out. Then you write out this whole story or joke. Then you look at, okay, I know how many syllables or how many words this needs to be in order for my rhythm and my timing when I say it on stage, right? Because one of the big mistakes I find people make with stand-up is they write something on paper that looks funny, and then they get on stage and tell it, and it's not funny, and they don't know why. And the difference is stand-up is an auditory medium, right? You're listening to me speak. So it's going to take at least a half a second for you to get what I'm saying and visualize it. So if I only read something on the page that's funny and I don't add any color to it, or emotion or cadence or tone or body language or facial expression, all the things you can't see on paper, it's not going anywhere. Your joke's not going to work. And so when I started to think that way when I was writing, I started to understand how to create something from scratch.
Mm-hmm. And Ben, that process, that refining process, do you tend to do it by yourself, or do you like talk to another stand-up buddy, kind of bounce it off each other? How do you like to handle it?
Yeah, no, I usually work alone. I write all my own stuff, but I have some buddies where I'll be like, hey, I'm working on this thing. What do you think about this? And I'll get some constructive criticism or feedback, or they might think of a great tag, and then I'll give them a tag, and we use each other's ideas sometimes. But yeah, for the most part, I come to people with ideas, because the thing I cannot stand in this industry, writing or acting or, any creative really, is when, someone says, oh, I want to be a great writer. And then you say, okay, well, what have you written? And they say nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, then you don't really want to be a great writer. You just want to complain. So if I come to somebody for anything, I better have some things done first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I find that sometimes when people say, oh, I'm an actor, and I'm like, when's the last time you actually acted in, whatever, small or big? And it's like, well, It's been a couple months. I'm like, well, you got same thing, with writing or stand-up.
Yeah.
Let me ask, or actually I thought I had, Ben, when you were saying that. So I took a class at the Los Angeles Community College, a stand-up class. This was a couple of years ago. And one of the things, the barrier of entry for that class was pretty low because it was pretty cheap. So it was an eclectic group. And I think, thinking back, it was kind of awesome, but like everyone was so different and so unique. Mm-hmm. How do you think that ties into people's, like, I feel like now when I think about stand-up comedians too, it's like everyone kind of, they've got their own point of view. They've got their own kind of what you're talking about. How do you, I just curious your thoughts on that, or how you find that. I think that's a really cool thing. Embrace that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, stand-up is like ice cream. Everybody has their own flavor. And, you may like mint chocolate chip, and Corbin may hate that, and I might like Rocky Road, but it doesn't mean it's not good. It's just different. And I think that everybody kind of has to figure out their own style or their own voice. And there's certainly different ways to do it, and everybody has their own process. But I think it boils down to, you have to get up on stage. You have to fail. You have to succeed. You have to see what doesn't work, what you like doing, what you like about performing. For me, I had a writing background, but no performance background, So I had to understand not just how to write jokes, but how to perform, and how to be an entertainer, and how to be entertaining. And so for me, a lot of it was just getting up and failing, and being comfortable with bright lights in my face, and listening to the audience, and reacting in real time, and being okay with silence, and using silence as a tool to get laughter, and understanding how to do longer sets. I started with 3 minutes. I would get booked for 3 minutes, and then that felt long. And then 3 minutes felt like a blink. And then 15 minutes felt like an eternity. And now that feels like a sprint. And now I'm building an hour, currently, and that feels like, how the hell am I going to fill an hour? I have 35 minutes, So I think a lot of it boils down to, who are you as a person, right? Like what is authentic to you? Like, I never wanted to do like shtick and get up there and play a character. One, I'm not that good of an actor to do that. And two, to me, I'd rather people like or dislike me for being genuinely myself. So that's what you're going to see when I perform.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like that. And Ben's similes are on point. The like ice cream, like golf. Ben, I like this, man. It's you're good. Making me hungry, and I'm visualizing it. I think that makes a lot of sense. Getting up there and performing. Advice on that, because some people sometimes, their first time can be really scary, or they thought about it. Did you just God, I almost said go through the phone book. How old are you? Did you just go online and search open mics, or how do you find, whether you're in California, whether you're in other places, how do you find those places to get up there and do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started in LA, doing stand up, and you just kind of, you can go to either the big three, like the Comedy Store, or the Improv, or the Laugh Factory, and hang out and meet people and network and ask, hey, where do you do open mics, or what's the best place to go? You can do the open mics at the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, and the Improv, although it's much harder to get up, and you wait in line for a long time, and you might not get called. But It's a great way to network, and you meet some of the best young comedians and older comedians in Los Angeles. So I would go to these places, I would meet people, I would network, I would find out, hey, where do you go? What do you like about that mic? Oh, that mic sucks. You hate it? Okay, I won't go to that one. And then through there, I started to realize, okay, these were the dates and times, and these were the mics people were going to. And then I would sign up online, or show up in person and wait. And then you start going to these mics and you start to recognize who works the hardest, who you see the most around town, who's the most talented, and then also who the people who are maybe not the most talented, but work hard and are getting better, because you see their bits evolve and their jokes, they're working on them. And then you see who's full of shit, who will tell you how great they are, what thing they have on the horizon, but then not working hard enough. And they tell the same joke, the same way, the same time. And you start to realize, okay, these are the people I want to gravitate towards because I'm going to get better and work harder. And these are the people I need to avoid unless I want to be stagnant and stay the same and kind of get into that negative self-talk and that loop of like bitching and moaning. But the dangerous part of that people don't realize is you're guilty by association when you hang out with those types of people. If you're standing in a circle and people are bitching and moaning about what comedy club sucks or who wronged them or what they hate about X, Y, and Z, then you're the guy who hangs out with the guy who complains. And so I was just very aware of that and tried to surround myself with positive people, positive energy, and people who like to work hard.
I love that. And I have a follow-up, which is, I do feel like, because when you're saying that, I feel like a lot of stand-up kind of comes from like anger or frustration, which is the flip side. So like, how do you kind of, I love that because I'm a positive person too, but I think there's also like this like balance that you have to do where like, you've heard it where the stand-up guy who's like, my life is great, I just got a new car. It's like, well, who cares? So there is kind of like I'm just curious kind of your thoughts on that different energy or, yeah.
Yeah, I have a buddy who likes to say that stand-up is the angry art, and it's like some of my favorite comedians like Carlin, Bill Burr, people like that. They're not like positive on stage. They're ranting about what they don't like about society. But the difference is they're talking about the ills of society or the hypocrisies of certain things when you're on the street and you're not Bill Burr the comedian, but you're Bill Burr the person. If he's just pissing and moaning about everything he hates, no one wants to be around that guy.
No.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like you have to be able to separate, I guess, your stage presence or persona from what, your professional or who you are as a person off stage, right? Your personality off stage. I think they're two different things. It's not to say you can't be yourself on stage, but if you're doing an acting class or workshop or on set and you're in between takes and Corbin is complaining about everything, you're going to think, wow, this guy's professional. I don't want to be around this guy.
Yeah. That's what I do every day.
Sounds about right. No, but you're right. There is a you're tapping into something different. I mean, it's not like positive person can't get pissed or can't be annoyed or can't, have anger. But I think you're right. I think that's a really cool thing to keep in mind. Yeah, you're tapping into a different type of energy in yourself.
I think complaining is also like very tantalizing. And it's like you also are feeling that way, but it takes a very strong head on your shoulders to kind of just step back and realize that.
I think a lot of times it's easy as shit to complain. That's the other thing.
That's the truth.
Like it's easy to complain and say, that's not working, and then I think about that with like one thing is like, when I play like in a basketball league and the guy who's the captain has to like hunt people down to have them pay for the league. Yeah. He's already organizing it. He's trying to get 5 guys every week. And then he has to like hunt you down to get you to pay $100 for the league. And it's like, he's bugging me for the money. It's like, try being the captain. It's a pain in the ass, right? There's other things that's just one small example where it's like, when you're in that position, it's much easier, to have kind of somebody to something else to bitch about. It's very easy.
It's like a lot of people don't realize in the arts, acting, writing, directing, stand-up, whatever it is. Yes, your skill sets and your talent get you work, but really what gets you work is your relationships with people. And if someone's like, oh, there goes Ben, and he's always positive and he's always complimenting people and he's good to be around, they're going to hire you for a job. Versus the guy who might be just as talented or even more talented than me, but is a nightmare to work with. Yeah. That person's not getting the job. I don't care. I've seen it 100 times already, where if you're a good person and you work hard and you're positive influence around others, you're going to get work.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment. I'm so happy right now. This is why I wanted Ben on the show, because he really thinks about things, and you also are actionable about it. Like that's the kind of part that I always appreciate with you, Ben. Is like it feels like you take that extra step. A lot of people think, like myself included, where I kind of get stuck in that little zone and I try to figure it out, and I never actually like take that final step. Where did that come from? Like where do you get that discipline?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think, I worked a lot of jobs I didn't want to do and was good at, but my passion was doing writing or stand up, and I had to get to that next level, and I didn't really have anybody coaching me. I literally moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles and knew one person. That's it. And I didn't have any plans. I didn't have anything worked out. And I just thought to myself, like, I need to make it. How am I going to make it? And I think that's where my thinking started, was just, well, in order to be different or better than my competition, so to speak, was I have to outthink them, because I'm certainly not more experienced or maybe even more talented than any of them. Mm-hmm. But I know I have a work ethic that they don't have. And maybe if I think deeply, it could lead to creative ways to succeed.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting about that, Ben, I really love that you said that. I was just thinking about this now, where I think a lot of times we look externally first, we like Google it. We're like, how can I, who can coach me? I mean, I think that's all good, but it's like sometimes we have to look internal first, which is like, okay, have I put in the work? Have I done as much as I can? Am I bringing as much to the table as I can? And then you look externally. And I think it's kind of feels like a shortcut sometimes, where it's like, well, can you help me shortcut all this stuff? And you haven't done the work yourself.
Right.
And I think stand up, and other things, but like the arts is definitely a great example, where it's like, it's really hard to shortcut. If you're not putting in the work, it shows, you know what I mean? It's otherwise you're a little more of a flash in the pan, but to be consistently good, you gotta be doing it. I mean, I'm just thinking of different comedians, and, I think like Jay Leno still does stand up after, buying 1 billion cars and all that stuff. But the point is, he put in that work beforehand, and he still really enjoys it, but he's put in that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's an example.
You have to work hard. Like thousands and thousands and thousands of people move to LA every year to chase the same dream you're chasing. Mm-hmm. And you think that just because you want it to happen, it's going to happen. Like some people never kind of have the wake up call, the reality check. I think luckily for me, like I said, I started late in life. So I knew I was not moving to LA to make friends, so to speak. For me, I looked at it like, this is a business trip, and you're either going to fail and move back home and regret it forever, or you're going to figure out a way to succeed. And so, I met people, I did make some friends, but I saw very quickly they were trying to go out at night and make friends, and, they didn't have jobs right away, and they were just hanging out and sleeping in. And I would wake up, even when I didn't have a job, I would wake up at 6 a.m., go to a coffee shop, work on a screenplay every day, and treat it like a job, because I didn't want to fail. To me, I think I hate losing and I hate failing more than I like winning.
Yeah.
And so it was never about the end goal, like selling a script and being famous and being rich. It was more just like, I cannot afford to fail. I don't want to go back home and live an ordinary life. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was same. If I was to say, Corbin, since you're young and hip, he's not about that life, or he is about that life, which way does it go? Is the life the partying, or is it the not partying?
If you got to ask, then you don't know. I mean,
no, but I don't think you know either. That's why I put it on you. So I'm going to say you're
if you
about that
ask.
life.
Yeah,
Here's part of the problem, Ben. My co-host has no idea. I think that commitment you said, and that idea of kind of making active choices is what I would say. Those active choices of who you're going to spend time with, what time you're going to bed at, who you're going out with. I think that's something that, depending on when that happened for you, that's really important, because I definitely know for myself, I didn't make active choices. I was just more kind of enjoying things. And I think as far as career-wise, it definitely like hurt me in a sense, even though it took me a while to get to the point where I'm at, where I'm like, okay, I want to make these active, conscious choices. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, and that can change. It could like it can change your career, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, yeah. So I think that's interesting. I want to ask you, Ben, what does it feel like? We're gonna go deep. What does it feel like when you're bombing?
Oh, it is. It feels like a slow, painful death. Depending how much time you have, like if you have a long set and you're bombing, that's way worse than if you're bombing and you only have 5 minutes. You can just be like, all right, I'm
Does it get worse as you're
Of
like,
course it gets worse.
you don't
'Cause
just sit in it?
No, you got time, because you can't, like, if you're, if you're not headlining, right, and you have someone after you, you can't, let's say a 15-minute set, you can't be like, all right, 7 minutes have gone by, I'm getting out of here, because then that other person has to make up the time. So you don't want to screw that person over, but it's just, you get like a cold sweat and you can hear everything. All of a sudden you can start to hear like the person in the back drinking through the straw.
You're like Superman. You have Superman's hearing. You can hear everything.
It just, it almost becomes this out of body experience. Like, is this what I sound like? Do these people really hate me? I'm just, I'm such a hack. You just, all this self-loathing, and you become very self-conscious very quickly.
And what does it feel like? Like, what do you start to pick up on when you're getting out of it? Like, there's little like hiccups of maybe some positivity in there. Like, do you just try to hold on to that, or is it just kind of still riding it?
Well, if you're doing very badly or you're bombing and you start to turn it around, it almost feels like when you're wading in the ocean for a wave and you feel that momentum, like the gravity of the water kind of starting to turn, you start to realize, like, oh, okay, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. I just got to keep going towards it. And, there's been times I've been bombing terribly and I've leaned into it and it started to become funny. And then you just ride that wave and you start to kind of get out of it. And other times, not so much. The wave just destroys you. And you just you eat shit and you accept it and you move on.
I know some, like, one of the cringy things that happens when somebody is bombing is when they start to blame the audience.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I've been part of that. Yeah, they turn on the audience.
Yeah, and I'm like, how do you I mean, obviously that's got to feel good to try to release that, but you got to avoid it. Like, how do you recommend people not do that?
They're burning the ships. They're burning the ships, I think. Yeah, Ben.
I recommend somebody not do that. I guess grow up and be an adult and just have accountability. It's not the audience's fault if they're not laughing. You're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
You're not entertaining them. You know what I mean? If someone's heckling you, that's a whole different story.
Have you had that happen, Ben? Have you had that happen?
Yeah. I had a heckler like 2 months ago in LA. He was drunk talking through everybody's set, and he was just such a pain in the ass because he was loud enough where I could hear him when I was speaking, and then also loud enough where people weren't hearing the punchline of my jokes. It was throwing off a lot of the timing. Yeah. So I finally just addressed him, and I just ripped him a new one, and he stopped heckling very quickly.
I feel like it's that, you have to, with a heckler, you have to like let them get a line or two out, let them see if they're going to end. And then if it continues, then it's like got to be addressed because it is very distracting. I mean, for the performer, obviously. And that's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm just thinking about, I just got done, Ben, doing a play, which was a drama, but there was some comedy in it. But my point is, as actors, we're very we're aware of what the audience is. If they're laughing, if they're engaged, if we hear people whispering, we hear all that stuff, even though, we're not supposed to clock it. It's just part of what we do is we're supposed to, and obviously as a stand-up, you're looking at the audience, you're part of it. You've got, silence at times. And, so we're not immune to it is my point. Right. And I think sometimes when you're up on stage, the audience thinks, oh, they're like a robot up there. And it's so not true. Right.
Right. Yeah. I think, just like in acting, you have to look at the audience as a tool in your arsenal. Like, are you listening to what they're saying? Are you hearing the feedback, whether it's positive or negative or indifference? Are you using, your performance skills to entertain them? Silence, body language, tone, pausing, all that kind of stuff.
Do you enjoy doing like, this is inside baseball, Corbin, but like a crowd work or improv stuff, or do you like to kind of do you like to keep to what you've kind of worked out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like doing crowd work sometimes. I'm not a huge fan of it, just because I like to work on material that I've written. But there are a time and a place where it's great to do, and it definitely makes you a better performer because you have to think on your feet and use some improv. But I like to write on stage sometimes, which is kind of an improv skill where I'll come in with a written, piece of material, and then without any tags or real true punchlines, and think of it in the moment and try to write it on stage and just see what happens. And so sometimes you do get a reaction from the crowd, and you can kind of step out of the material and address the crowd and do crowd work and then pop back into the material. So I like to do that a little bit more than just, hey, anybody celebrating any birthdays, or anybody here married? Like that, to me, that's the most boring shit in the world.
Yeah, it feels a little.
Yeah. I was just thinking about who are some, you mentioned a couple comedians, but who are comedians like right now that you, or in the past that you just like are really big fans of,
Yeah, I love Patton Oswalt, Dave Chappelle, Seinfeld, Rock, Louis C.K. I love Mark Norman, Sam Morril, Tim Dillon, Sarah Silverman. I like Erica Rhodes. She's very funny. There's tons of people. I mean, I can go on all day.
Do you think there's a difference? Something I'm curious about. Sometimes, I mean, I watch stand-up specials. I love them. I just watched the David Spade one and a bunch of other ones. But then also when you're in person live, it's such a different energy. And like some of the Eddie Murphy ones, I mean, they're ridiculous to watch. I mean, they're so good. But I'm just curious because the difference there between being in person, and now I'm also thinking a little more as like kind of the audience member, but what do you think the difference is when you're watching it, when you're watching a special and stuff like that versus when you're seeing those guys, those men or women in person? It's a different,
This is a great question. I was actually talking about this the other day with a friend of mine. When you're in the audience during a live comedy performance, it's magic, right? It's like going to see a band live. There's something you cannot kind of explain to somebody about, like how it feels to hear it and feel it and experience. And then when you watch that on film or streaming, wherever, you're one step removed. You're like the person watching the person who's watching this. So it doesn't translate as true. Now, there are some stand-up specials you see on Netflix or HBO or YouTube, whatever, that are brilliant and super funny. But imagine how much funnier it would be if you were there live in person. So I think a lot of stand-up specials that people watch that go, it wasn't that good for me, or I didn't think it was that funny. It's because you weren't in the room. And the way the audience is mic'd on stand-up specials, it never really sounds as funny as it is live. So a lot of times it's done a disservice to the comedian, because you could watch it and be like, oh, it doesn't sound like they really like that joke. But if you were in the room, it murdered.
I was, Ben, were you in LA when Dublin's was the bar on Sunset that did stand up, or was that before that might have been before?
Yeah. When I moved down, Dublin's was like the spot.
That was the spot. So I used to go there. I think Tuesday nights they had comedy. And I remember I saw Rex Lee do a set. No, sorry, not Rex Lee. Bobby Lee. Sorry, Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee did a set, and he killed. And it felt like it was all improvised. I was like, holy shit. Like we can swear, right, Corbin? Holy shit. Like it felt like it was all improvised. I was like, this is amazing. Like, and when he got done, I was like, turned to like the random guy next to me. I was like, that was amazing. Like he like improvised. I just moved out to LA, improvised. And the guy was like, no, I was here last week. He did almost the exact same set. And I was like, huh? And what I thought his skill or talent is it, for me, the realization I had was like, he made it feel like it was all brand new, fresh stuff. And maybe some of it was, but this guy was saying a lot of it was like what he was refining it and stuff. And I was like, God, my mind was blown. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, first of all, Bobby Lee is amazing. He's so funny. I love him. Part of, being a comedian, if you want to be a professional, is you have to develop an act. Right? Because the idea is to take the show on the road, whether you're featuring or opening for someone big, or you become the headliner yourself, or working longer sets out of town, what have you.
Yeah.
You can't get up and do different things every single time unless you're someone like a Rory Scovel, who's super gifted at improvising and can kind of improvise an entire set. But that's certainly not me, So I think a lot of young comedians, the trap they fall into is thinking, well, I don't want to say the exact same set I said, because my friends or the other comedians I know will be like, hey, you're doing the same set. Yeah, no shit. It's called building an act.
yeah, that's part of it.
And I think part of being a great comedian is exactly what you described, which is like, you have to make the audience think this is completely spontaneous and you are doing this for the first time, or you just thought about this idea or thing that irks you or whatever. And I think that's the beauty of like a really great comic, like you described Bobby Lee, which is like he's done that set thousands and thousands and thousands of times, but you thought he just pulled this out of thin air.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I think it also ties in with Ben. I'm just thinking about like when I watch Chappelle and he says something that like tickles him and he kind of hits the mic on his thigh, which maybe it does, but it also could be part of just like, I'm enjoying myself. You guys should be enjoying, I don't know exactly. I think that's part of the magic of it,
Yeah. I think the thing about that is like, that's how you can tell like Chappelle is a real one. And he talks about real shit that he's interested in, because you can't fake that. You can't slap the mic against your knee and fake that laugh, unless you're like a sociopath. But I think when you talk about things that really you're passionate about, like a Bill Burr, like a Carlin, like a Chappelle, that's why the cream like rises to the top. Because imagine Dave Chappelle is going to have to do, on the minimum 50 dates for a tour, and the maximum it could be 200, 300. Like a Tom Segura or Bert Kreischer, those guys who travel all over the time and really work. Yeah. You can't slap that mic against your knee 200 times if you don't really care about what you're saying.
That's a good point. I mean, how do you think you find like that inner voice, like something that you find that passionate about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think for me, because I started later and I had some life experience, you just kind of know what you want to talk about, right? Like, I think if I started young, I probably would have either flamed out and quit or failed miserably. But starting later in life, I know what it was like to have bad relationships or good relationships, or have death or loss, or kind of understand how the world works even a little bit. And so for me, I like to talk about things I find absurd or ridiculous, or that are, like the hypocrisies of society, or what I'm going through in my life, being married now, having a kid now, or
how was, Ben, the first time your wife came to a show? How did that go?
I mean, it went well. She didn't. She wasn't like unsupportive. She's very supportive. She's very supportive. She's a brilliant person and a brilliant actor. So she gave me a lot of really great notes on like how to perform. And she said, like, your jokes are great and they're well written, but anybody could tell that shit. Like, you need to be able to perform it so that someone will see that and go, only Ben can do that. And so she was giving me more cues and tips on performing and being an actor and understanding what it means to be a three-dimensional artist versus just a good writer and a good stand-up joke writer.
Oh, and Corbin, is Ben joining our Sunday afternoon acting class? Is that what he's saying right now? Is this his way? It's a long-winded way of saying it. You don't have to just ask, Ben. Just ask. That's awesome. And did has she? So she's supportive of it. And then having a child. How old's your son or daughter?
My son just turned 1 like 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations. Has that changed your stand-up at all? I mean, obviously changed you as a person, or is it still kind of catching up because it's still he's so new?
Oh, no. It changes you fundamentally as a person, and then also as stand-up. Like, it's giving me more to talk about. It's giving me more to think about. A lot of ridiculous things happens when you have a small child, especially, in today's society. So he's giving me like 10 minutes of material, so it's been worth it.
So you're gonna keep having him. You get an hour soon. You get an hour soon.
Yeah, he's putting a little bit of the work. Yeah. Oh, what would you, getting a little deep too? Again, what would you consider your brand is? Like, what have you kind of honed in on what that is?
I don't know. I don't have a brand, or if I do, someone will tell me. I try not to get too wrapped up in that. I think a lot of comedians worry about what's my brand, what's my voice, who am I, what do you think of me when I'm on stage? And I think that's a lot of wasted time because, I get it. We're in the age of social media and trying to build a following and understanding kind of where you fit in. But I think the more you think about that, the less work you put in, because you wind up becoming an administrator to your career and not actually the artist.
Well, who knew what the hell Google was before they named it? I mean, they just gave it a name. I mean, I'm sure there's something behind the name, but my point is like it was something awesome. So then the name was justified. Similar thing, Ben. If you're doing your thing, people are going to say, "Oh, he's this," right?
I think my brand is Ben. and people will then like it or not. And the ones who like it and gravitate towards it will kind of put me in the box that I fit in, and we'll go from there. You know, I don't worry too much about what my brand is. I just try to be true to myself and as authentic as possible. And I think, you know, the people who like it, and the people who don't, well, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, true. I kind of want to pivot a little bit to writing and everything that in that world.
Sure.
How was that journey? Like, where did you start out, and like, was it what was that caused you? Same thing with the comedy. What made you addicted to it?
Yeah.
Like, what was all of that?
That's a great. Yeah.
Do you go to open mic writing events, or is it different? Is it different world?
Oh, no. I've never done that. I don't even know what that is. But
I just made it up. I was trying to bridge with stand-up. Sorry about that. I was trying to make a bridge.
Sometimes he turns left.
I started writing at a really, really young age because I had a really good imagination, and I suffered from dyslexia. So my whole life in school, I struggled with, you know, dyslexia and dyscalculia, which is when numbers and letters get put together. So my math was terrible, and my reading comprehension was terrible. I could never remember anything I would read. And so I used to just write creative stories because it made me feel better about myself. So I would write. And then right before my 16th birthday, my dad passed away of cancer. And so I just kind of kept writing and decided I wanted to write a book about my life, kind of like David Sedaris, or, you know, in that kind of vein of like memoir, short essay, like Augustine Burroughs, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote, I got to college, I wrote. And then when I got out of college, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna try to get a book published based on my life. And so I wrote like a 300-page book of short essays that were, you know, funny, sad, in between, kind of humorous. And I got rejected like 400 times by every publisher in the United States and London. And so, and I know that because I kept every letter. I kept every single one. Some were very nice and polite, and some were very mean. But it motivated me because I was like, well, fuck these people. I'm going to prove them wrong. Mm-hmm. And so like right around that time, Amazon had come out with their self-publishing platform, which was so new at the time. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there and let the market decide if this is good or not. So I put the book out. It did really well. It sold a lot of copies for having no marketing, no publicity, no publisher, no agent, nothing. I just literally put it out there, and it did pretty good. And it gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, maybe I can do more writing. And I had always loved screenwriting, so I kind of would watch movies and then write out the script.
Oh, cool. Like
transcribe it terribly because I didn't know what exterior or interior, any of that stuff. Yeah. So I did that for like hundreds of movies, like a lunatic. And then I took a community college class and started to learn, oh, you actually have to like structure this for it to make sense. So then I read every Sid Field book, and I, you know, read Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, and then I read every screenwriting book that there was that was available to me. And so finally I was like, you know, I have a great idea for a story. And I told my college roommate, former roommate at the time, we were both out of college, and I said, hey, I have this great idea. You know, it involves Buddy Holly, his life, and it's not a biopic. And he said, all right, well, let's do it. And I'm like, how do you do that? He's like, let's go to Texas and talk to his widow. So I had just moved to LA. I had this story. I flew to Texas. I had cold called Buddy Holly's lawyer and said, hey, I'm going to be in Texas tomorrow. Can we meet? Which was a lie. I was sitting in Sherman Oaks with no furniture. He says, yeah, come by the house, which was like, holy shit. I just talked way into this. So my former roommate and we literally started a production company, LLC, and called it a production company, flew to Texas, met with Mary Elena Holly, Buddy Holly's widow, and her lawyer for 4 hours. And I told her my idea, and I said, look, I want to write this story that, you know, involves your husband's name and likeness and music, but it's not a biopic, it's a dark comedy. And what do you think? And she was like, absolutely, let's do it. So I spent my life savings to acquire, you know, some of the songs and the likeness and the rights for an option. And so we basically had a couple songs, his name and his likeness, and we then got to work. When I got back to Hollywood, I was like, let's start calling people. And then eventually, you know, met some people. You know, a guy went to South by Southwest, and my partner met the guy who scored The Color Purple and won an Oscar for that. He agreed to do the music, and then he introduced us to a brilliant director who's now signed on to direct the film. who he helped create VH1 Behind the Music and has directed every major live television performance for music, and he directed every episode of Ridiculousness, and he's done everything in TV, and now he's making his way to film. And it led me to my mentor who read the script and was like, yeah, this isn't good. And he was the first guy in Hollywood to not kiss my ass about it. So I really trust this guy now, because my mentor had won the Audience Award at Sundance for a film. He had worked for Sony as an executive for years. He had created and produced the first film for Apple Television. He just had a major success with Sylvie's Love for Amazon that did really well at Sundance and sold for like $11 million. And so here's this guy saying, like, you're not a professional. You have good instincts and you're an amateur, but I can make you professional if you come study with me for, 3 days a week, 2 hours a day. So I did that for 3 years, every single week, 3 hours, 3 times a week, 2 hours a day. And now I get paid to write, and I'm, I have a couple things in development. And it's made me that much sharper.
How did you, first of all, side note, same thing when Corbin started my class. I said, you're terrible. He said, at acting? I said, no, just as a person.
Just bad
so
guy.
I had to build him from the ground up. So I totally get it. Second of all, how did you find him? Like, was it a random email? Was it someone recommended? It was
very much like I said earlier. It's like I was working with the director to try to get people interested in the Buddy Holly script. And he was like, hey, you should talk to a guy that I worked with Broadway. My mentor had done, I think, Steppenwolf or Spring Awakening or something on Broadway, and they had known each other in New York for years. And he said, I think this guy can help you get to that next level. And he introduced me, and that was it.
Wow. And what were some of the things, obviously you learned so much in that time, but what were some of the things that you could tell, like, somebody who's just starting this journey to, like, kind of pay attention? Because I know we've talked a little bit offline, a little bit about it, where it's like how to look at the budget when you're writing a script and things that are a little bit more heady in that kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I'll say, like, it was probably the most valuable experience of my life. Honestly, it's made me so much better as a writer and a stand-up. Like, honestly, without him, I wouldn't be where I am right now. But one of the biggest takeaways was attention to detail. Like, people think that they're doing great, and they think that they are writing a great script or, great actor or whatever, because you only know what you know. And if someone has a lot of experiences trying to impart some wisdom on you, you better listen, right? So, like, he helped me learn writing also by letting me sit in on his production meetings or go to set while he was filming something, or read scripts and do coverage for him in between him teaching me. So he would give me 1 page of a script and be like, tell me everything about this page. And I would come in with like 10 things and be like, yeah, I did extensive research. And he'd be like, you missed 50 things.
Wow.
And my head would explode, because I'd be like, whoa, this dude is looking at, like, down to the word on the page and dissecting the clues and information that tell you about a script or a character or themes or plot or budget or costume or wardrobe or direction. And it was just like, wow, I don't know shit.
Yeah.
And it was very eye-opening.
I thought of when you said that, success leaves clues, and it sounds like you found someone that was able to help you see those clues, put them together and really put in the work for the detail and things like that. And I think that's interesting that you said it's helped your writing and helped your stand up. And I think that's, that elevation is such a wonderful feeling, Ben, to put in that work and then feel like you're getting better. And I think everyone goes through that, especially in entertainment. Everybody, it's just like, that is part of, that journey that everyone's on, where if you don't go through those times of like that 3 years, 3 times a week, 2 hours a day, you don't usually make the progress. It's really, really hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think anybody who's working towards something, a big goal, right? They think they're working hard, but they don't realize they're not working as hard as they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because our brain, its main goal is, self-preservation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that comes in too emotionally, where you don't want to fail. You don't want to feel the emotions of failing and feeling like you're not good enough, or that this dream is out of your reach. So you will prevent yourself from actually going as hard as you can, because you don't want to fail. And that's why it's important to have people around you who are like, no, you're not working hard enough, or you could be doing X, Y, and Z. Right?
Yeah, I think right after self-preservation is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember I was at a grocery store once and like someone before me was checking out, and then to the person behind the counter, they're like, don't work too hard. And I was like, is that what we should be telling people? I mean, not that we should all be overworking, but it was just like, take it easy there. And I think with what you said, you talked about that. And I think there are times where that hard work is what really changes us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Helps us grow.
Someone told me a long time ago, don't wait for permission.
Mm-hmm.
That changed my life, because I used to be this person who would think, well, I can't do it like this. Like, I can't cold call somebody because in their, website it says, but we don't want solicitation. And had I never cold called, Buddy Holly's lawyer, none of this I wouldn't even be here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of times it's like, you have to give yourself permission to exhaust every option you can to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're going to feel silly trying it or doing it, or someone around you says, no, you can't do that, or it's not done this way, or, why don't you try something else? No, if you want something bad enough, you got to do whatever is in your power to make it happen.
Yeah. What is it? Ask for forgiveness, not permission. Like, it's just the same deal. Yeah. You just got to try your best.
Before we get to kind of our final segment here, Ben, with kind of the balance or imbalance of being a husband and a dad and writing and stand up, how do you kind of like your days? Like, do you kind of focus? Does it depend on the what you're focused on, or do you kind of block it out? How do you kind of set up your days to get everything done and handle it all?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I have a schedule. I run a production company with my partner, the same guy I mentioned earlier with the Buddy Holly stuff. So some days we have conference calls, other days it's writing sessions or strategy or business development, or, now that he's also become a really great producer in his own right. He produced Sylvie's Love that I mentioned earlier, and he's also produced the Dick Gregory documentary for Showtime that did really well. People are sending us stuff now. So now I'm reading scripts sent by other professionals or streaming services or production companies. And so deciding, do we want to allocate some of our budget towards these things or developing our own IP? And we're also raising financing for the next 3 years for our future plans. So it's a lot of hats, and then writing stand-up new stuff, or, talking to buddies about stand-up, and then also the non-career schedule, getting my son ready for daycare, picking him up at daycare, being a husband, running errands, for the house, all that kind of stuff. So you just you try to create a schedule, block off certain things, certain times, and try to be as flexible as possible. But having a routine is key. Otherwise, you just get burnt out really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I just saw a really cool thing that was talking about how routine gives you the freedom, right? The routine gives you the freedom, not like, I got freedom now. It's like, no, the routine gives you the freedom, which I thought was really, really made a lot of sense,
Yes,
absolutely. Well, great. Well, Ben, we want to get to our final segment of the show, which is your best bad acting. And so we're excited. What we're going to do is we're going to send you a quote. It's a fun one. It's from, like a famous movie. And if you don't know it, we can tell you about it. But the idea is not that you do an impression. You can do it your own way. We put through a swear in here because we knew that's your style. So if you take a look, it should be in the chat. So you probably have to find it on your phone.
Yeah, let me check it out.
Yeah, see if you recognize it.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what this is from or what the setup is? Otherwise, I can tell you what it is.
I feel like I know it.
Yeah.
Am I going to be wrong? Is this Alec Baldwin from...
Bingo. Glenn Ross.
Yeah, Glenn Ross, right.
Yeah. So he's have some fun with this whenever we might give you a fun redirect or something, but if you when you pull it up whenever you want.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember it so I don't have to... I'm going to read it cold,
Exactly.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
Fuck you. That's my name. I drove an $80,000 BMW to get here. You drove a Hyundai. That's my name.
I love it. Okay, cool. Love it. Redirect.
Oh, redirect. I'm trying to. I want it to be. I kind of want to get weird with it. So I kind of want you to just kind of get a little loose with the arms. So like I'm almost wondering if you go about it with like a fun accent or something, like a pirate or like something very strange that would be able to like kind of loosen the body.
Did you see his face when you said pirate?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if that's
yeah.
I was like,
Pirate. You can do whatever accent you want. You can just, I just want you to have a little, yeah, just I want to see what happens here.
I don't know accents.
No worries. What if you,
I got one for you.
Let's go.
I want
Go
you to
ahead.
do it. I want you to do it as Bill Burr.
yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's the one again? Fuck you.
Fuck you. That's my name. You know why, mister? Because you drove a Hyundai to get here tonight. I drove an $80,000 BMW. That's my name.
Yeah. Fuck you, pal. I drove an $80,000 sports car to get here. You drove a Hyundai. That's my name. Fuck you.
Perfect. That was the accent. That was exactly what I wanted.
That was it. I was like, Bill Burr was in the building, folks. The pal. The pal is what made
the pal
it. Pal.
really
Yeah.
made it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I
Well,
love
we
it.
hit so much stuff. Ben, this was
Yeah,
awesome,
so
man. It
good.
was so great
Oh,
to dive into the stand-up stuff. I love hearing that and your writing. And, you know, we wish you tons of success. Excited for you and being a new dad and everything. And man, that's great. The journey you're on and really cool, man. We're
Well,
really,
thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Moving Spotlight podcast. Corbin?
I wanted to start with a joke here, John. So,
Sure.
the difference between a good joke and a bad joke, timing. There we go.
Nice.
Nice, right?
Nice.
Good one.
My turn for a joke. And I like that you said start because we're actually ending this episode, so I like that too.
Yeah.
Where do you find a no-legged dog?
Where?
Wherever you left him.
Um,
I know.
So-
Don't come at me, Peter. Don't come at me. My dog has all four legs.
oh no.
Yes, it does. It does. It really
Oh,
does.
God.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. Check us out. We're on Instagram. We have our website. Get out there and listen, share the pod. We appreciate some reviews, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, and if you're bored, go onto our website and just check out our recommendations. We got our TV shows, our films, our podcast recommendations. Just check it out.
Let us know what you like.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the
Moving Spotlight Podcast.